Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Nice to see so many people joining us this Tuesday morning, or as we've just had a chat with Emily, who's joining from New Zealand, so this late hour in New Zealand. So thank you all for coming this morning. Um, my name's Marianne. I'm one of the co-artistic directors at Collective Encounters, and I lead on creative development and artistic policy for Collective Encounters. Um, Welcome to this open space event. It's the first time we've done one of these online in a while. So we're very excited to have you here. Um, this the theme for this event is looking at alternative hierarchies within arts organisations, and that has come from it's part of our Radical Retrospectives programme, as Collective Encounters is 21 years old this year, and we've been given a heritage grant and some Arts Council funding to look at organisational development within that 21st birthday year, as well as some other celebratory opportunities. And also because Collective Encounters ourselves have moved on to a kind of co-leadership model and looking at sociocratic structures within arts organisations and how we can share power across the people that work and participate in our projects. So we're really, really excited to be able to host this event today, and we're hearing from five amazing speakers this morning who each have something to say on that idea of alternative leadership and alternative hierarchies. Um, the way I'm going to share my screen so that we can see the slides this morning. Here we are. So, slideshow. Can everyone see that? Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. So, welcome. And as I said, this morning's event is about alternative hierarchies in arts organisations, and our calling question for the open space is what can emerge when arts organisations employ alternatives to traditional hierarchies within their leadership structures. So our five speakers, we have Alan Lane from Slung, Abby Horsfield from Collective Encounters, who will be talking about the participant advisory board, and Maria, Pay, and Penny from Movema, who will be talking about their co-leadership model. So we will hear from these speakers in the first half of the event this morning, in the first hour. Each of them will speak for 7 minutes, and we've given the Movema gang a little bit more as there's multiples of them. And Paddy will give us a wave. He's given us a wave. So we'll give them a 1 minute warning to wrap up. After we've heard from everyone, we will have a Q&A. So you'll have chance to ask questions of our speakers from your own perspectives, make comments, and really start to think about how do you relate to this and your work or organisation relate to this theme of alternative hierarchies, and what might you want to take forward into the open space portion, which will happen after 11 o'clock this morning, after the first hour, where we will name the rooms for our discussion. So this is where we hand the decision making over to you, and you can decide what the agenda is for our meeting this morning, as an open space is a meeting without an agenda. And then we will have discussions and feedback after them. So I think there should be, I'm going to stop sharing there. We should also have a link to our live transcription service called Otter. That's in the chat now. If you need to access live captioning to go along with this morning, you can open the link in the chat and it will take you to our live transcription service that you can have open in another window. The first half of the meeting is being recorded. So that's all the provocations and the Q&A will be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube afterwards. So if you don't want to appear in the recording, just pop your camera off. And I think that's all the housekeeping for now. We're not in a room together, so I don't have to say about fire alarms, exits, you know, you're in your own space, so you know about that. So without further ado, we're gonna go to our first speaker, Alan. Alan is the artistic director of Slung, based in Leeds and established in 2001, was it? 2001, 2000?
It was so long ago, Marianne. I can't remember. It was ages
Ages, an age ago.
ago.
And Slung Low produced large-scale theatre productions in non-traditional spaces. In relation to leadership, the company runs a leadership development program in the Temple, which is a outdoor green space that the company manage alongside their studios. And this is a program which explores values-based leadership for artists and community members, if I've got that right. So, Alan, I'm going to spotlight you so everyone can see you, and then Paddy's going to start his
Great. And he's going to
welcome. So,
time it.
Paddy, give us a thumbs up. Okay,
Brilliant.
off you go,
Thanks
Alan.
for having me. I was the artistic director. I'm now the co-chair, which is which is a really useful introduction to this conversation. We're a theatre company that was born out of trying to be a collective. We're not, and I think that's really important that we bounce between a number of structures. And I'm just going to run through some of them, some of the ways we behave, because we believe that the form, the process dictates the end result. So if we're trying, for example, to be in a rehearsal room and find new ways of sharing power, then we have to find new ways of sharing power when we're constructed as a company. That doesn't mean we always borrow from the book of ensemble and collective. Sometimes we borrow from other worlds, and I'll try and explain that. The most important thing about Slung Low, I think, in these terms, is everyone is paid the same. So we used to say everyone was paid the average wage of the nation, which at the time was true, which it was £28,000. Now we are all paid the same based on the average wage of the nation, because there are about 9 different versions of average wage, and the average wage means something very different in London, and it means something very different in Yorkshire. But we are all paid the same. It doesn't matter who you are. We used to say if you're the guy that makes the tea, but the guy who makes the tea was me. So whoever you are, you get paid the same, and that's true for all the people we bring in. Now, all of the things I'm saying today are in no way a map for goodness. Everything I say has some good things in it and some bad things, and I'll try and be really honest in my 6 minutes about what they are. If you're the average, if you're on the same pay, and I think the guys are on 38 grand now a year, which is a lot and no money at all, depending on how you look at it, and you're a 28-year-old kind of just graduate, that's quite a lot of money. If you're a 46-year-old bloke with a mortgage and a kid, that's not a lot of money. And so those things are in, and we have thought long and hard about whether we should have a different system, but the system we have is everyone gets paid the same. In that instance, we believe in equality rather than equity. There are other times when we believe in equity. There are no holidays. You can take whatever time you need off. You just need to just be responsible to the team. If you need to go, you go. When we started this, everyone said to me, that means no one will ever come to work. The opposite is true. I have to leverage the buggers out and make them take time off. And sometimes so what that means, we have full company shutdowns, because if I don't have full company shutdowns, they think I can't see when they're sneaking in, and I can see them on CCTV, and I'm like, go home, go on holiday. So none of that, none of the sort of hierarchical of you've earned so many holidays. You take the time you need to do the thing you need to do. What that's led to is mostly burnt out. That's what that is, and shutting the company for like a month at Christmas. Authorities are shared as much as is possible. So if you work for Slung, you have a company credit card, and that limit is as much money as there is in the bank account. So you can go and spend £230,000 on any given day on a canal boat if that's what you want to do. But when you come back, you better have a really good idea for it. In reality, what that means is people actually ask more permission, not less. It's the maddest thing. The more authority you give them, the more they double check. That's no bad thing. But this idea of authority being something that can be shared is real. However, there has to be a we make shows with hundreds of people on floating platforms with guns and all those other things. And at some point, if you do not do the due diligence on someone has to be held responsible. And that was always me. I take responsibility. That doesn't give me any more authority. The authority I have is the same as everyone else, and the authority that the moment demands. So if I am in charge of a safety thing or a creative thing, then I'm in charge, and I expect everyone to respond to that. But if Joanna, who is now the chief executive of the organization, is in charge, then everyone responds to that. So we are weird in the structures. We're not a charity. We're not a community organization. We are simply we're a company that has one share and it's £1 and it's mine. Now, I have off every single person who's ever joined Slung has been offered, give me £1, you're going to have an equal share in the company. But by the way, there are no profits. Everyone gets paid the same. And no one has ever. And even now, I'm removed. It's still the case that the legal responsibility is mine because the day-to-day authority of the organization is not held in how the structure is. The day-to-day authority of the organization is our responsibility to our communities, our responsibility to our service users, our responsibility to our audience, and our responsibility to our artists. That is where the real authority is raised. Now, this is a trick if we don't mean it. If we do not live our values, everything I just said is like, oh my God, you have to live it, and you have to live it through every single thing we do. So we are governed in that way as well. We have a community advisory board made up of local residents and neighbours, and we also have the most interesting piece of governance and hierarchy we have is the Imaginative Intelligence Warriors, the IIW, which is 14 children from the local primary school who have been selected not because they're the best behaved, but because they are the most interesting children. They have real programming power. These buggers have spent tens of thousands of pounds on some pretty weird projects. Our job is to pose them the questions. What do they want to see? Stimulate them with things, and then do exactly what they ask. So they wanted a classical concert by some very big artists that we had to get from the South Bank Centre. And then they wanted every flavour of tango. Now, I got to be honest with you, I didn't think it was a good idea, but it doesn't matter because that's not how hierarchy works. The concert was better because there was every flavour of tango. This is just a fact. That classical cello music was just infinitely better. All of which is to say, we try and give away as much authority as possible whilst holding all the responsibility.
That's 1 minute.
Yeah, Roger, bud. There is no point saying to a community advisory board, oh, and by the way, now spend all this time scrutinizing the finances. And by the way, if you get it wrong, you go to prison because you would just paralyze them. Our job is to take that responsibility, do the due diligence, and then say to them, tell us what you dream of. And so what we gain from this is resilience. We are sharing the load. I have moved away from a company I founded and worked for 20 years. I now have and the company is in as good a shape as it ever was. If we had to go through another change, a constant evolution, this constant sharing of authority allows us to do that. It also gives us awe and wonder because there are so many people who actually can spend money that it's not a creative director or whatever else the titles are imagining things. It's a whole community imagining things. And they imagine the maddest things. And by doing them, we go places we weren't expecting. The cost, and I'll leave you on this because I promise to be honest, is it's a really hard way to live. It's a really hard way to live. Hierarchies protect you and allow you to have really bad days. When you're in a gang of 4 and you're responsible to each other and you're responsible to literally just your mission, then it's a really hard way to live. So there are plenty of people who've joined Slung who after a while have said, do you know what? This is a little bit too much for me. And we accept that. This isn't for everyone. That's my 7 minutes. Thank you so much for having me. I'll see you in the questions.
Oh, I'm muted. Thank you, Alan. Right, move that. Thank you. We'll give you a Zoom round of applause. Um, Thank you. I think that's a really interesting kind of redefining ideas of power and authority and responsibility. And I like the idea th that you said have all the authority with none of the responsibility, and separate how separating out those ideas has actually meant that you can live this non-hierarchy and be responsible to your community. And oh my God, if I was a child, I would have wanted to be an imaginative intelligence warrior. Yeah, and I want to know about all the different flavors of tango because I'm sure there's more than I probably know exist. So thank you so much. I'm sure people are having questions brewing, as we've heard from Alan. Um, if you have any questions, please jot them down in front of you or put them in the chat. Paddy and I will be fielding questions after we've heard everybody speaking. So if you do have any questions or comments, please do put them in the chat so that we can go through them, hear them later, or save them and you can ask them live to our speakers. So next up we have Abby Horsfield, who is one of my fellow co-artistic directors at Collective Encounters. Abby will be talking about a approach we have to programming and policy and all things participation within Collective Encounters that was established as part of a program called Above and Beyond quite a number of years ago now, where we invite participants who are part of our projects to be part of our participant advisory group. And luckily enough, they had a meeting last week. So I was able to ask Abby, could you come and just chat to us and talk, tell us about what happened in your PAG last week? So I'm excited to have Abby here. Um, I'm going to spotlight you, Abby, so that you can hear from everyone. Paddy's going to give us a thumbs up. There we go.
Okay, hello, I'm Abby from Collective Encounters. For you that don't know about us, we're a theatre for social change company. We work with adults, we work with young people, we work with everybody across the city region here in Liverpool. Um, and today I'm going to talk about how we have been trying to evolve and how we are evolving our participant voice in the company. We've tried for a long time to have participant board members, but we found a lot of the time, even though we do governance training, even though we really encourage that there's a lot of members of our community that for whatever reason can't be on our board due to legalities of the board members, or they're not able to take on that level of responsibility. So we were looking at how do we really get our participants to talk about what they want from the company and really actively engage in being a really important voice and being heard within the company. And so in 2019, we started the development of our PAG group, our Participant Advisory Group. And this is an evolving group of participants and partners and Collective Encounter staff that are involved in shaping and making decisions about all aspects of our work. And it was hard at first because it's quite difficult to get people to say, I want to be part of something, an equal part of something, when they've used to be being a participant, coming along, being involved in the facilitation. So it took quite a lot of time to build up the confidence in our participants to share and really share their opinions and their voices. And now they are sharing. We're getting so much back, which is just amazing. And they're also beginning to see how their voices shape what we do. And that has grown the confidence of our participants. So I think it's fair to say you can't imagine that everyone's at that stage when they first begin to be able to voice what they want to say. And we use creative methodologies within the work we do with our PAG to really get people sharing. The first task of our PAG was to look at our whole evaluation framework within the company and to go, what we realized was that our evaluations weren't working, that we weren't actually hearing what participants were saying, that actually we weren't setting the right framing questions, that we weren't looking at what we wanted. And a few years prior to that, we as a company had created a manifesto. And the manifesto was to look at drawing down what the essence of collective encounters was. And that was co-created by staff, board members, community participants, partners. We all got together to look at what is it that collective encounters is. And so we used the manifesto as our starting point to look at how do we evaluate. And if we use our manifesto, which is a living document which evolves and isn't stuck in one time period but can be changed and moved as our evaluation tool, then we're looking at constantly meeting the needs of our community, because our community are feeding into what they want us to be. And we created an evaluation framework that we use across all our programs, and that's still moving and changing and growing with the PAG group. We've As well as that, the PAG group has fed into the content of performances. PAG group members are on our interview panels so that we're having that participant voice throughout. The structure of PAG is that we invite all our participants to be part of it, and we send out invites to the meetings, and then the agenda, what we talk about in the meetings, is set in the meeting, and decisions are made and disseminated by the people in the meeting to the core to the rest of the core groups and the rest of the participants and the staff team. I thought the best way to really highlight what we do is just to talk about what we did at our PAG meeting last week. We met, and the first item on the agenda was looking at participant voice on the board. We've had some participant board members resign recently, and we felt that the participant voice wasn't being heard. So we looked at the PAG with the PAG about what it's like to be on the board. We have PAG members who've been on the board, and how might we best get our voices heard as participants on the board. And so after a lengthy discussion, we talked about having PAG on the agenda of every board meeting, and for two PAG members to attend the board to support each other in reporting back on the participant voice and looking at how they might want to feed back to the rest of our participants. And so that's been actioned, and we are having another meeting to look at how PAG wants to present on the board, and we're looking at creative ways to do that. The second item was around fundraising. We did the big give in March, and it was really successful, and the participants loved it. And we've never really done participant fundraising before as a company, but the PAG group said everyone wants to do it again. And so in the PAG group, we explored and looked at the idea that we could have a yearly fundraising event where people could come together and they could share their talents, their um their skills, and get people donating. And that we wanted a table that showed how much we were raising. They wanted something that enabled people to see that each of their penny was going into a pot. And so we've put on the agenda fundraising week in March. And then this merged into a meeting about the fact that a lot of people are missing information about the company because they're not reading the newsletter. So we looked at different ways we could get the news out there to our participants. And then we said, the PAG group said, we actually want to meet as a whole company more than just at the fundraiser. We want to meet twice a year. So that's been actioned as well. And what we find with the PAG group as well are that lots of rumours come up in the company, and there was a little bit of worry that funding wise, that people were wondering what was going on with funding. Is there uncertainty within the company? So we're able to dispel rumours and get people helping us with the fundraising, helping us look at what we could look at, and helping us create funding bids. So that's something PAG has now said we want to be part of. We want, as participants, to help raise money to keep the company going.
1 minute left.
They also said that we didn't publicise and celebrate ourselves enough. So we've got PAG group members now phoning local radio stations and saying we want to get on the radio to talk about collective encounters and what we're doing. And so we're sort of giving that autonomy and saying to people, yes, let's move with it. So the PAG group is always growing. We haven't got it completely right yet, but what we're looking at is ways that we can really engage our participants in getting excited about the work we do and their voices being meaningful and steering the work in a really constructive way. That's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Abby. And remove your spotlight. We'll do another Zoom clap for you. Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I think it's really interesting to hear, the breadth of that, from governance to fundraising to comms and advocacy, that's all done within kind of one participant advisory group meeting. And again, it reminded me a bit of something that Alan was saying about how when you had that conversation about governance, that actually they were saying, why do we need to be full board members? But we could, as a group, report. And it shows that when you start imagining alternative hierarchies, you can find ways to fit outside existing structures, that actually it doesn't need to be a fully fledged board member. It can be that we create a structure that supports participant voice on the board without having the kind of responsibility and legality for the company. So thank you so much, Abby. Again, if you have any questions for Alan or Abby, or a kind of general question about alternative hierarchies, please pop them in the chat, write them down for later. And we'll have about 20 minutes, hopefully, to have a Q&A. So finally, this morning, we're going to hear from the co-directors of Movema. Movema are a Liverpool-based charity, and we're going to hear from three of the co-founders who are still co-directors together. They work on a co-leadership model, which included recently advertising for a co-chair of their board, similar to something Alan said earlier. They're an award-winning world dance company based in Liverpool and in Bristol. They work across split sites, and we're really excited to have Maria, Pei, and Penny here to talk to us this morning. I'm going to find them all and spotlight them. I saw that Penny, there you are. I can see you now. Right, so spotlight. Just give me a second to find you. There's Pei, spotlight. Penny, where are you? Give me a wave. I see you. There we are. I can spotlight you. Maria, you can share your screen if you need to. Paddy's. And for everyone's information, Movement are going to have slightly longer, as there's three of them. So Paddy will give you a warning after 9 minutes. Okay, off you go.
Okay, it's going to start with me. So there's three insights in Movement co-leadership model. One of them is enable global majority and women's leadership to thrive. So we began as 4 women dancers from very different cultural background, ethnicity, socioeconomic, neurodiversity, but we all share the same enthusiasm and passion in world dance. We all come from very different experience of pathway into dance, from starting early age. Some study in arts management, business studies, or starting as mature dance students. And we all come from very different experience of managing arts, from 0 to 6 years when we first started. And we have very different leadership style. So we started 16 years ago with 4 directors and co-founders, which is a very unusual setting. But so far, we built something really resilient, dynamic, and very far-reaching. We find strength in our individual reputation, knowledge, skills, and experience, and we build and open up bigger opportunity for the collective. For example, we're able to find funding from very different sectors. For example, the police department, fire service, NHS, Mersey Travel. Enable diverse thinking and diverse voices represented at all stages and level leads to unique solution and approach. One of our success program is the Global Majority Artist Development that set very people-centered care and flexibility. And it breaks all kind of boundaries, because it's not, most of the program is very like either you are focusing on choreography, performances, or teaching, and we just break all the rules and say, as long as you're passionate in dance, you can develop your own artistic skills without any boundaries. So we constantly support each other to challenge representation, especially in terms of cultural diversity, ethnicity, as well as broaden inclusion. Access to arts leadership. Via significant upskilling through shared working practice, learning on the job, meaning none of us have to go through like an arts management degree, like a finance degree or dance teaching degree, or train in all dance style in different country. We can all share this within us, and this increased access to arts leadership, especially women from global majority are underrepresented in this position. And we create a model to address this. There are challenges as well, especially when it comes to decision making, because it can be very time consuming, often really exhausting to negotiate, and then have to, it's very emotional, and then we have to look after personal relationship and overlapping responsibility. And other challenges include sometimes we are just so passionate and full of so much ideas, it's really hard to concentrate on one area and lack of concrete vision. But the positive are endless. Is make a real difference. Let us create really innovative projects to amplify diverse voices and new collaboration and diverse income stream. We take turns to encourage each other and drive each other through hard times and bring real renewed energy and inspiration to each other. Overall, building a more open structure with extra understanding, support and care within the company, but not compromising on our ambition. I'm going to pass it to Penny.
Thanks, Faye. Hello, everyone. So our next insight is around our alternative leadership structure enabling sustained roles in the arts. So we believe we are stronger together. So our approach is to listen and benefit from the diverse perspectives and lived experience, so constantly evolving and working in a non-linear way. We co-founder directors are artists ourselves. So we came with that lens of collaboration. We had such a broad reach with our communities, artists and partners. So rather than organisations that work in a silo, we were able to create a flexible person-centred model, understanding the experience of our participants and freelancers working in the arts and building long-term relationships with the people that we engage with. This meant we have become a home for dance professionals and have engaged with some artists for 10 to 16 years. Interpersonal relationships is our next point. So our vision of shared leadership means really truly listening and hearing each other, challenging one another and continually practicing self-reflection. So we've been able to have some difficult and honest conversations in order to move forward as a fulfilled collective leadership team, which hasn't always been smooth or easy, but to do it by ourselves, we committed to bringing in, say, facilitators or advisors to help us navigate it. And we were all committed to that process. So we feel other organisations might be scared of having these types of conversations or struggle to move forward. But we believe our kind of shared leadership approach really enables this to happen. So fulfillment is our next point. So our co-leadership structure feels more fulfilling, fair and just. So starting from absolute scratch with no income 16 years ago, all 4 co-founders worked in Movema for 13 years and 3 of us co-founders for 16 years, showing that kind of Movema meets our need for that fulfillment. So at this point now, Peggy is stepping down as a director, but she will continue to work with Movema as an artist, a project lead and consultant, feeling strongly that she'll continue to align with Movema's values and vision in her other ventures. Having varied roles really helps with the sustainability. So as directors have always delivered on all levels. So we are creatives and we thrive when we're engaging with our groups and our communities. So as we gathered more responsibility and brought in more people into the organisation, we were starting to spend more time on things that were not necessarily our passion as artists. But to balance this, we realized we needed to keep our roles fulfilling. And by doing project roles, teaching, choreographing, and kind of development work has really helped us to kind of find that balance. And just the last point from me is around flexibility. So we've really embraced personal change as part of life. So I moved to an entirely different city. I moved to Bristol 12 years ago, and yet we continued to make it work. So we found new opportunities for growth. We stayed true to our values, and we were committed to offering this mutual support across the two locations. We've also welcomed sabbaticals for travel, for creative work or self-development, as well as maternity leave, flexible hours to pursue other opportunities alongside Movema. And these kind of choices have contributed to a greater job satisfaction, longer retention, and a deeper generosity of sharing and growth with one another as well. So rather than viewing personal change as disruption, we've kind of woven it into a sustainable model of working. Thank you. And now over to Maria.
All right. So our third point is that we think this model avoids institutionalization and tyranny. So it's a less institutional model, as you can hear, challenging traditional structures and ways of doing business in a culture where people feel safe to challenge. It's a flexible structure with a focus on values. We see it as a decolonized way of leading, so shaped by care, shared vision and accountability, and a commitment to building the world we want to live in. So we care for each other many different ways. We were friends before we were business partners. So we're team players and shapers and inspired by others' great ideas. That's what excites us. So even if it's not our name in the headlines, we've been fluid between the roles. So we always fill the gaps. We kind of jigsaw and, step in to support each other's to shine and succeed, really.
That's 1 minute left.
We've encouraged each other to grow and learn, sharing skills, and we've always challenged each other to improve and reach for the next goal in the artistic journey, but to do that together and to overcome the challenges together. Continuing to inspire each other and believe in each other, coaching and mentoring each other as well. And this became the values of the company, which are growth, inspiration, and unity. We built a shared vision and accountability, and that was challenging at some times. With strategy, we tried a million different tools, business plans, scorecards, action plans, to get everyone working towards one shared vision. Co-writing business plans was challenging and everyone wanted to contribute in that way, but we had to kind of admit at one point that it wasn't working and work to our individual strengths, having those tough conversations. So some people wrote sections, some people stepped back, and some people took responsibility for capturing and weaving in all the different voices. We worked hard to delineate boundaries and to create safety for each other, reviewing our roles and contracts and job descriptions. We kept track of hours to support accountability and avoid misunderstanding and resentment building. And we also had core hours initiated to support well-being and effective working together. We initiated quarterly strategy weeks so that we'd get on the same page as well and give the time together that it really needs. When we moved to a charitable structure, several business consultants that we were working with advised us to have one CEO to fit better with stakeholder expectations. So we took that on board at the time. So currently the CEO legal name lies with the person who's led on strategy. However, we remain co-led. So no decisions are passed without all the founders' buy-ins, basically. We continue to review and explore the co-CEO structure, and hopefully we'll also have co-chairs soon. We're recruiting at the moment. So the last point is building the world we want to live in. As founder succession carries on within the company, we're committed to finding a way for Movema to continue to be led by women dance artists who represent our diverse communities, underpinned by the values we developed as a collaborative team. We feel the best way of doing this is to continue with the co-leadership structure. So together we learned how to open doors for ourselves, and now we want to continue to open them for others. How will this work? We don't really know. We'd love to find some support to research other models and develop our own in a supported way. So thoughts and prayers, people, as we continue in our very underfunded region of dance, community dance. Thanks so much for listening.
Thank you. Fabulous. You can stop sharing your screen. Amazing. Thank you. Let's give our thanks to Maria and Pei and Penny. I'm just going to remove all your spotlights. Where have you gone? There you are. Right. Amazing. Let's give a Zoom round of applause to Movema, our Movema gang. Thank you so much. I think that was a really I don't know, reviving feminist, accountability. These ideas of accountability, of care, of listening, of admitting that it is hard emotional work as well sometimes. And it reminds me a bit of a book I read last year, which is Culture is Bad for You, that was just pointing out um, how little representation there is of women and people of colour in arts leadership in the UK. And I think it was really refreshing and like a kind of call to action to hear you talk about the Global Majority Arts Leadership program you run and the approaches you have to kind of share those decisions and work on a kind of asset strength based way. So thank you so much. Before we go on to questions, let's just have another Zoom round of applause for Alan, Abby, Maria, Pei, and Penny. Thank you, everyone. So I think we have some questions already. Paddy, we've got a
Yeah, we've got some.
few. So,
Okay, so a question for Alan. You're a company with no profits. Where does your funding come from? The person asking is doing a PhD with research in regenerative economics in the arts, so this would be very helpful.
So we're funded by the council. We're one of the national portfolio. We get £185,000 a year. The local city council will give us, I'm going to get this wrong now, 25 grand a year. I might be a couple out, but that's broadly speaking. That's our core funding. And then our projects, especially the Leadership Academy and other things that we do, tend to be funded on a case-by-case basis by the big ones, Paul Hamlin, Palouse Gulbenkian. The thing that we're really clear about in terms of the money is this is a project beyond the market. There is no profit. There is no profit model. There's no capitalist model for Slung to exist in one of the poorest wards in South England, operating as a pay-what-you-decide organisation. It just doesn't. So the minute that the Arts Council go, we're no longer interested in funding it, doesn't mean Slung finishes. It just means that that part of the project, the experiment, the question finishes, because yeah, it just wouldn't make any sense. We'd continue to be artists asking questions. We just wouldn't do it in this way. I hope that answers the question.
I think so. And there's also another question for you, Alan, on that. Like someone's asked, they're interested in the evolution of Slung and did Slung start with the model you have now, or what was your evolution, your journey and its evolution into this flat structure and how you work now?
If you had to summarize, so Slung is a question, and so the fact that it's a company and a theatre company and everything is just the best way of answering the question at the minute. The question is how best can this group of artists serve their community in this place? And as the community changes and the artists change, so does the answer to the question. So we started an endeavour to be a collective. We were spectacularly unsuccessful in that, in the way that many collectives are. There were kind of 25 of us all trying to share responsibility and just mostly fighting. And we've slowly evolved and will continue to evolve. So if you'd had this conversation with me 2 years ago, I'd have been the artistic director, I'd have lived in Leeds, the team would have been different. And so this is a constant evolution. We change our structures when the structure no longer fulfills the function that we need it to. We try for that to be evolution rather than revolution. But I mean, in the last 25 years, we've been experts at shows for one audience member at a time, large scale outdoor shows, closing and opening ceremonies. We've run a pub. We were a food bank for 3.5 years. It's a constant evolution, is there? And then our structure should change, and our hierarchies change to a degree, although always with a mind to them to be shared responsibility.
Thank you. So it's kind of that responsiveness and responsibility that you were talking about earlier. I'm going to go to, there's a question for Abby. Abby, do you remunerate participants in any way for their participation in the PAG? And or is it like a trustee voluntary position? Could you talk a bit about that?
That evolved. It's interesting. When we started up the PAG, well, it was part of a Paul Hamlin funded project. We had funding in there to remunerate participants, but none of them wanted it. And it was really interesting. What we tried to sort of say, we'll pay you to come to these meetings. They went, no, we don't want paying. And I think there's two things that come into that. And a lot of our participants are in receipt of benefits and are worried and concerned that any money they might get might interrupt that. But also people said we want to give back to the company. And so we do have expenses for travel, childcare. We feed and water our participants when they come, but we found that people didn't want it. And so we've it's a voluntary, we now do it on a really voluntary basis, but it's interesting that evolved, and that came very much from PAG members saying, no, we want to give to the company, we want to give back to the company. But of course, if somebody needed to have a remuneration, we would find that for them, and they would talk to us. We always say, if you need expenses, if you need support incoming, we can help. But that came very much from our participant group.
I think Tessa's just raised her hand. Do you want to add something, Tessa?
Yeah, it was just to say that because we also have this kind of PAG model that exists within individual projects, and we do sometimes for individual projects, we build into our budgets kind of small stipends for participants. Because, yeah, as Abby said, a lot of what we found in previous projects is people haven't wanted paying, but we have had other projects where they have. We've got Michelle on the call as well, who led on our Black Maternal Health project. We did have a sort of participant group there who were maybe in slightly different situations and absolutely did welcome that stipend that we were able to give them to pay for their participation. We also did another research project recently where we did pay, and actually I think some of the people in the co-production group for that project did accept payment and some of them didn't, for some of the reasons that Abby laid out. So we do still try to build those fees into our budgets where we can. It is a bit more difficult for the company-wide PAG at the moment, but yeah, we kind of remain alert to it and definitely do try and build that in where we can. So just to add to that.
Thanks, Tessa. Okay, so I'm going to whiz through some more questions. While we're on finances, we have for Movema, so any of the Movema gang, could you speak more about your funding sources? Are they traditional or different to other performing arts organisations, and how does that work? Who wants to come in there? Penny, Maria?
Maybe we can tag team it. Pay, you go first.
Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned before, usually we'll go to like general funding, but when we first started, we worked very much with the local. So we did get some funding from the police department to help them, to create some project that help with reduce crimes. We work with Mersey Travel to help their drivers to be more fit and have well-being sessions. So it's very non like the normal funding straight to Arts Council and the local authority. So because of our different contacts, me previously working in the pharmacies, so we're able to work with like pharmacy groups. So it's just very much different than the performing arts school that just doing performances. We work very much with the local community and find out what they need and present it to whoever in the area that able to fund the projects. And Maria, you can add on.
Yeah, so basically we've always had this kind of like hustle culture and a strong entrepreneurial spirit. So what Pay's talking about is that we just worked very kind of hustled for cash basically, and little projects. So we've always been between 50 and 30% earned income. based. So you're probably not aware, but the Northwest and the Southwest are like the least funded for dance activity in the country. So we're not in a great position to get our own cash, and we've never really had regular funding. The only time we got some was through the Elevate program, which is to support diverse organisations to apply for MPO, and we got that just at the start of COVID. So obviously that scuppered a lot of our plans to kind of put ourselves in a position to get that kind of regular funding. So we've had, like I said, that kind of like hustle culture, but we're very proud of that kind of those percentages, because that's really unusual. And, you know, I'm sure everyone knows within this sector.
Thank
you. Want to add anything? No.
I think while we're on you, we've got a question from Tessa, and this is again for Movema. So you spoke about some of the benefits of your co-leadership model for you, the three of you as co-leaders. Do some of these principles or values or the kind of felt benefit of that co-leadership model extend to your wider staff or freelancers? And if it does, how do you do that?
As I, kind of I mentioned, we've kind of had a lot of retention from a lot of our kind of freelancers for like many, many years, and I feel like we have created a bit of a hub and a home. Whereas a lot of other organisations see people for a short period of time, and we have that as well. But we also have people who keep coming back, and we very much listen to kind of everybody, and being creative people ourselves, like we do kind of bend and flex and go up, like take everyone's ideas, and with our other staff as well, everyone's very included, not necessarily in all the strategic meetings, but we have lots of opportunities for everybody to kind of input. It's kind of like a two-way kind of process when we can do our business planning and strategic planning.
Mm-hmm.
For me, this is something that it would be really great for us to think about more. It's like I said, it feels like we never got to that stage. We had all these plans, wrote it into business plans. We want these participant advisory groups. We want these kind of structures. We want to be able to invest in people in that way. And we need to do it because of this succession thing happening. But it's been a challenge because of this, not having the regular funding, always having to hustle for cash has just always held us back. So if anyone knows of how we can get past this, please get in touch.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a bit more of a provocation that we could take into the second half about how do we extend this. And then Alan, there's one more from you. I might need some clarification on this. So, do you work on language as well as shape and model? I ask because you use the term give away authority, which felt counter to the approach you shared.
Yeah, I mean, we do. I think one of the things that I didn't cover in this because of the time is that we're based in South Leeds. Our language is based around our community, so we actively try not to use arts language whenever we possibly can. One of the things that happened really, we used to run a working men's club for a long time, and I remember once someone saying, "Check your privilege," and literally the launch of fury and anger, which is as a phrase in this section would be great. We'd all understand it and be like, great, that's a really helpful phrase. Thanks very much. So we try and use language that is understandable by everyone without any expertise. So it could be that is an example.
Oh, we might have lost him a minute.
Careful about it in a different way than people might expect. Hopefully that's an answer.
Thanks, Alan. And I think that what Alan's kind of getting at is that really, really deep engagement with your local community. And that also came through in Pay's answer about the funding, and Abby and Tessa talking about actually remunerating participants for their involvement is case by case, and it really takes something that one of the co-leaders from Movema said about that deep listening. And I think this leads on to a kind of final question, and Kit, you might want to unmute or tell us a bit more about what you meant by this. But Kit says, the people who've spoken so far have been leaders or founders of their respective companies. I'm wondering if anyone has any experience with demanding a more open, non-traditional structure from below, in an existing organisation. And Tessa, you pointed out that for Collective Encounters, our flat leadership structure has emerged because none of our founding members are still involved in Collective Encounters. And so we needed to find a way that worked for the people that are still working for Collective Encounters. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that, or
Sana's raised their hand. If we want.
Sana, do you have something in response to this?
Oh no, sorry, it was just that I
Okay.
did want to ask a question afterwards.
Okay. I'll come to you after this. Aidan, you've raised your hand.
Hi, everybody. I'm also from Collective Encounters, and I should make it clear that what I'm about to say does not apply to Collective Encounters, but I've been working in this sphere for a very, very long time. And I've worked for a number of organizations that profess to have flat structures or non-hierarchical structures of various kinds, and none of them actually worked. I can say a bit more about that if you're interested now, or I can maybe join a discussion group or something. And I don't want to name the companies, that wouldn't be fair because these companies were not doing this deliberately. But I think there's a very interesting tension that emerges when people say that they have flat structures and they don't then enact those. There's a very interesting piece of writing. Again, Marianne referenced the sort of feminist literature on this. There's a brilliant paper called The Tyranny of Structurelessness, which was written in the 70s, I think, and identified exactly that problem. It's like, hey, we're all equal. But actually what that does is if there are no explicit structures for ensuring that equality, then actually natural hierarchies emerge, bullying can take place unconsciously or unconsciously. And at the most extreme form of this, and I'm not referring to anyone I've actually worked with here, but at the most extreme form of that you get is you actually end up with a cult. So just very brief reflections on all that, but happy to go into more detail about the specific problems without naming anybody, because I do emphasize that these companies were companies of goodwill where despite some of these problems, there was also some recognition of the issues.
Thank you, Aidan. And I think that shows that this is maybe something that we want to explore more. And Tess has put that we could definitely make a discussion topic out of this for the open space half. So I'm aware of time. So Sana, we're gonna make this our last question. Could you?
Yeah, I'll try and be as succinct as possible. Yeah, I'm currently setting something up, and I've been in structures that haven't worked. And so I'm basically, yeah, I'd love to chat to all of you at some point, hopefully in the next session. But yeah, the number like 3 people at the top, like kind of as in I was in a similar situation and it was them against me the whole time. Like kind of it just felt like I was literally getting voted down on every single thing. And I've also been in a similar one where there was a PAG, or it was never an official thing, but the communication between the board was just so terrible. So they're both things that I'd like to explore going forward. I was just wondering if you had any feedback about that.
Does anyone that's quite a big.
I know it was going to be bigger.
But I think there's something in that a lot of the values that people have talked about today, and as Alan, thank you, Alan. Alan's put his email address in the chat. Thanks, Alan. No worries if you need to dive out. Thank you for your contribution today. That kind of values-based and strength-based leadership may be a kind of retort to that kind of, like you say, that hand up, that no. There's also, yeah. So that might be something, Abby, do you want to
I just wanted to say something like it, it's not easy, and I think that has to come from that mutual place of wanting things to work. And I think that, you know, we hear that great example from Movement where four people came together with similar shared values. I know I'm on a flatline structure where there are three co-artistic directors. We don't always agree, but actually we work together because we have that value of learning. And I think sometimes when you talk about companies where you feel that you are not being heard, it's because there's not within the structure of that company, there's not the willingness to change and grow and learn and listen. And I think that it's really hard. And sometimes I have in the past worked for companies where I've had to step away because I've had to go, actually, it doesn't align with what I feel, think, and believe. And I think that it's really hard. And similarly, if you're going to consult participants and have participant advisory groups and get voices heard, you have to work also with the people that need to listen and look at how they listen. So we still work and still have that ongoing look at how does our board actually listen to our participants, and it's an ever evolving and ongoing thing that you have to put time and energy and work into. So it sounds to me like sometimes there are people in those hierarchical structures who have power who don't want to hear. And when you look at that, then more open structures can't work because they're not willing to listen. Sorry to put the dampener on things, but I think sometimes you have to sort of have a look and take a check of, is this where you really want to be if it's not working.
Thank you. Thanks, Abby, for that. I'm gonna wrap up the Q&A section because we need a little break, but we also need to decide an agenda for our open space. So thank you again to everyone for your provocations, the speakers in our first half. That was really fantastic discussion.